Final news story, Democrats' ultimate NIMBYism, sanctimonious cities. Yes, sanctuary cities now are constantly complaining and arguing and fighting over having taken migrants. And it is NIMBYism, and I'll explain why. I've talked about this before. It's kind of a throwaway story, but let me get it off my chest for the third or fourth time because I like ranting and complaining about NIMBYists. You'll notice that NIMBYists piss me off more than everyone else. I can't think of a single group of people I'd rather not have around me than NIMBYists. I would rather have someone completely opposite my political views next door, who nonetheless, at the very least, is honest about them and forthcoming and not a shit-fuck NIMBYist, as opposed to someone who fundamentally agrees, but then they immediately decide to go against their own advice and their own ethos and their own principles the second that it impacts them in some meaningful way. The NIMBYist sanctuary cities are experiencing right now a tiny fraction of what has been experienced along the southern border now for decades. And they're complaining about it. New York City and Chicago notably. Martha's Vineyard is the greatest example. Again, the greatest thing Ron DeSantis has done as a governor is the Martha's Vineyard migrant transfer. It showed starkly a bunch of extremely wealthy people with 5 or 6 extra bedrooms were not even willing to bed down the foreigners, the brown people, in their own homes. There were discussions, recorded discussions about them saying, oh my God, well, we don't have enough food. Oh my God, where are they going to go? So I had to sleep in the fucking attic of the church or some shit like that. I'm thinking to myself, you've got between all of the homes on Martha's Vineyard, you probably got 10,000 extra bedrooms that nobody's even sleeping in. You can't take in a migrant or two, give them a fucking peanut butter sandwich. And these are the people, they voted I think it was 81% for Joe Biden in Martha's Vineyard, telling that's NIMBYism in progress. You voted for a person who wants, if not open borders, at least opener borders, because slave labor is profitable in the United States. And human trafficking is something that the Biden and his friends like Jeffrey Epstein like. They like the availability of small children that they can rape to death and then throw in the ocean. It's a sport to them. They can't help it. They're just, complete psychopaths. The actual devil worshippers. Actually, hey, Jim Stewartson, the actual satanic people out there are people like Joe Biden and Jeffrey Epstein. Just for your next release on Twitter, so you can fucking get a clue and get a life. And they vote for it, but the second that the problem shows up on their doorstep in a tiny microcosmic form, they go completely crazy. It was like Martha's Vineyard never existed before. It's the only exciting thing that's happened there in 100 years. Oh my God, 60 people are coming to our island uninvited. These uninvited guests, we should shuffle them along fairly quickly. And indeed, within several days, that is what they did. They sent them up to the mainland up in Massachusetts. No clue about where they are now. They've probably been caught and released after processing, and half of them are probably currently slaves. They're working in sweatshops or in brothels, or they've been killed. How lovely. And New York City has thousands of people, migrants there. I liked how they said, well, it's actually a lie. It's a hoax that the homeless veterans were kicked out of hotels in New York. Yeah, it was. It turns out that some of those individuals weren't veterans, but homeless people were kicked out of the hotels. Again, another cope. What about a story from MSNBC? Well, that's actually a hoax. Yes, but you're not getting the fucking central point. There's too much overflow of people coming in. Even though it's a tiny proportion of the people showing up at the southern border, they're supposed to grin and bear it and build tent cities down in Weslaco or down in San Diego or something. They can handle it. The second it gets to New York, they complain about a few thousand people and say the city's running out of services. So they decide to start nationalizing effectively, which is, I don't even know how it's fucking legal, a bunch of hotels, kicking out people that were going to have weddings, kicking out people that have fixed housing. By the way, there have been instances of that. People getting evicted. They have a fixing agreement. There used to be rent control in the United States. They have a long-term contractual capability of staying there at a certain rate, and they get kicked out anyway. Because it's an emergency. It's a state emergency, they've declared. It's bullshit. Martha's Vineyard is NIMBY. Chicago is NIMBY. And it's not even, by the way, it's not even the upper class in Chicago that was complaining the other day. I talked about this. It's people from the lower middle class mainly. Oh my God, they're bringing him into our community. They're putting him in the Motel 6. Oh, what are we going to do? They should be taking care of us first. Well, then why the fuck did you vote overwhelmingly for Joe Biden, a working class Chicago citizen who happens to be black? Who did you vote for? I'm guessing maybe one of you voted for Donald Trump. If you voted at all, you probably voted for more of this shit. And now that other states are getting fed up with it because they don't have the services capable of even remotely taking care of the migrant surge, are sending some of them as a pressure valve to your regions where you've declared yourselves sanctuary cities and states. You voted for it. You've enshrined it in your own legal codes. You've vowed that you won't even cooperate with ICE, and now you're complaining. A bunch of complete goddamn hypocrites, the worst, literal worst people in the entire world.